We can try again.
I got it.
Yay, great, thanks.
So I'm going to start off by just introducing myself, although Rebecca did a nice job of it. My name is Lucia Bowers. I am a 15-year veteran teacher in Burbank Unified. I primarily taught social studies and language arts in middle school. And this year I'm a teacher on special assignment, working with students recovering from, for lack of a better word, learning loss, academic support, and interventions. One crazy thing about me, during the pandemic, I decided to become a Google certified trainer. I share this with you guys because it isn't like I'm a person who has always had this like knowledge of technology and just has like this wealth of tech skills. It really was something that I had to practice and learn and become competent in. But during the pandemic, I started off with some questions, and then I became level 1 certified. Then I became level 2 certified, and then I finally got my Google certified trainer certification. So all of that to say that if I can do it, anyone can do it. Anyone who wants to learn more, anyone who has interest in technology, it's accessible to you, but you have to have a willingness to do two things. So how did I become an expert? I hate the term expert. I prefer to say that I'm a certified trainer because that just shows that I did some work. The way that I got to be a certified trainer was by being willing to do two things: being willing to ask and being able and willing to flop. So being willing to ask means that when I couldn't find out how to do something, I was willing to ask Google online. I was willing to ask colleagues. I was willing to reach out to people who had more knowledge and just ask the question. That took a lot of courage and years of like building up that courage to ask. But that really did help me on my tech journey. And the second aspect was becoming more willing to flop. So every single time I use technology, including today, there is a part of me that has the idea that I may flop. I may fail horrendously in front of all of you today. And that's part of learning, and that's part of being willing to grow and learn as an educator. And sometimes you just have to take that risk and be willing to take that risk to grow and to be someone who can become Google certified, right? It doesn't take innate skills, it takes that courage. So I just wanted to give you that little bit of encouragement because, like I said, if I can do it, anyone can basically do it. So we're gonna go ahead and get started, sorry. See, right there, tech. You never know. So today we're gonna talk about 4 main things. First, we're gonna do what I call a 102. So assuming that everyone has basic understanding, we're gonna go on to some tricks and hacks on Google Forms, Google Sheets, Google Docs, and Google Slides. Then I'm going to quickly go over some tricks with Jamboard, assuming that maybe you've heard of it, maybe have tried it once or twice, but really want to understand how to use it. That's going to be pretty short, by the way. Next, some things that people usually don't use, but that I think are great Google tools, which are maps and arts and culture. Those are underutilized Google programs, but I really think that they're meaningful and can be really impactful in the classroom. So we're going to get started with good old forms. Okay. How many, I'm just going to ask, and like I said, maybe it'll flop, maybe no one will answer. How many of you have used Google Forms before in your classroom? Either show of hands, thumbs up, whatever you want to do. Okay. So Google Forms to me is just an easy way to get started with Google products. You can use a form in a way to, kind of engage students like a quiz. You can use it as an entry ticket, an exit ticket, a check-in. To me, Google Forms is a really versatile app in Google, and I use it in a variety of ways. Today, I'm just going to share a couple of tricks to make it just a little bit more engaging for students. So number one, don't skimp on the photos, GIFs, or graphics. It makes a huge difference when you're taking a quiz, for example, and you import an image of a map. If a student needs to know where something is on a map and you don't provide that map for them, I would bet that they're just going to look it up online. So you're better off putting it in the form itself so that they don't have that temptation to go onto a different site or look up a map on their own. You provided it for them. There are also full annotated maps or graphics that could be useful in forms that you can just import. So don't skimp on that. Please feel free to add as many GIFs, graphics, photos, or maps as you like. And it really does make a big difference. Trick number two is for faster grading. In my opinion, it is easier to grade by question. A lot of times people, when they're looking at sheets and when they're looking at forms and they're trying to grade essay questions, they go through each individual person's writing sample, short paragraph, or one-word answer. It's easier to go by question and you'll see all their responses in one place. Some people who like using sheets can import and use sheets as another way to grade more quickly. But basically with forms, there's no end to how you can use this. And I feel like a lot of people are comfortable with forms. I was going to have us look at this sample here. So this is a check-in that I did with my students. Okay, and you can see that it's fairly straightforward. Okay, it's nothing fancy here, right? We've just got the part where they write their name in, kind of a question about how they're doing. How do you use Google Classroom in your classroom? All those things, right? This right here is what most teachers do, I say, at the 101 level, right? You made the form, you give it out to your kids. At the 102 level, to make it more engaging, you can see how I added those GIFs in so that each response. And it just makes it that little bit extra, like just gives it that little extra engagement, okay? So instead of just asking a rating scale, you might have them match a picture that kind of goes with how they feel about something, or you might add some GIFs, or you might add a graphic or an emoji. That's one way to just elevate the form so that kids are more engaged with it and they really feel more like interested. Okay, I can tell just by your faces. For the first form, you just kind of glossed over it, but now you're kind of looking. You're like, wait, what's Stanley doing? Like, what's going on in the pictures? What's going on in the graphics? And that's what we want for our kids, right? We want them to pause, look at the image, read the words underneath it, and make the best choice. So this is just a quick demonstration on how adding in graphics, GIFs, memes, all of those things elevate your forms to that next level. Okay, and then at the end, I always have a space in my form for feedback from the student. Even if it's a test, I always leave a space at the end, and I encourage you to do this. Always leave a space at the end for some sort of feedback. Whether you want to ask them an open-ended question, like in this case, I said, what's your favorite thing? What's your favorite episode of The Office? Or just tell me your favorite character. Anything that tells them that you're going to actually be looking at the form, that encourages them to do their best. Just knowing that there's something that they're going to be held accountable for. I've found in my years of using forms that when I started adding that little personal touch at the end, I got a lot more engagement from students. Okay, so before I move on to the next one, I wanted to see, are there any questions suggestions or ideas for how you can use forms in your class? Or if do you have a class and you want suggestions from me on how you could use forms?
Lucy, I have a question.
Sure.
Is anyone in the waiting room that needs to be let in?
No.
Okay, great. That's my question. Thank you.
Anyone else have a question?
It's kind of a basic question, but I was trying to do a long-term sub assignment last year, and then I did a couple of times forms, and I could never find the actual results. I don't know if it was because I was sharing the Google Classroom with another teacher, but now that I have my own class, I'm kind of like hesitant to even use it again because it was so disheartening to have all the results, and I couldn't really access them, find them without like hunting for them.
Right. So that's something that happens a lot with tech that I find, right? Like something goes wrong that first time and then we don't want to do it again. And that's happened to me, can I just tell you, so many times, so many times where I did a test and I can't find the results, or I forgot to switch the little button over to have it count as a quiz, right? So it wasn't taking their submissions, it wasn't counting which ones they got right or wrong. Most likely that's what happened in your case. There's a little slider that says make a quiz. And if you don't click that slider over, it's just going to take their responses without actually doing the scoring for you. That would be my guess, that that might be what had happened in that situation. Again, with tech, you got to be willing to flop, right? So you had that one time that was a bad experience. You got to take a deep breath, troubleshoot, figure out what went wrong. And I honestly tell my students, you know, I know last time we did a form, it didn't quite work out. We're going to try it again this time. Let me know if it works. And because I give them that access to the conversation and I make them part of it, they see me learning and they know, and they give me a little bit more grace, right? Because they're like, okay, she's trying it too, right? Instead of coming across as an expert, I'm coming across as a learner, and kids respond to that. So it's our first time is a great way. Yeah, I tell them it's the first time, I might not know it, I might mess up, help me learn how to do this. Kids really interact and engage with that. So Edward, don't let that one flop stop you from flopping again. keep on jumping in the pool, keep on trying. Because I have a feeling it was just that one little trick that you just didn't slide that little slider over that said make a quiz. Once you make it a quiz, it should keep all the scores in the center tab, and it should have everything recorded by student or by class. You can see a class summary or you can see an individual student summary. Okay. All right, Taylor.
Hi there. Okay. Thank you for doing this. I teach middle school social studies as well.
Cool.
So I give a lot of Google quizzes, and I'm trying to, there was a way earlier this year where I could release just the score and they would not get the question. And I've done all the restriction tabs, but now for some reason, when I return it to them, they get the question and their responses. They don't get the correct answers, but they get the questions. And I'm trying to just have them get the score, so the questions don't get let out for those that still have to do it.
So I'm going to go into forms again. They did change a little bit of the format on forms. So some of you may have noticed that if you were using it in the past. Now we have the questions here, responses in the center. So this is where you would see all their answers, right? Edward, here's another place that might have kind of been switched off. That means that they can't turn it in anymore. So you always have to just kind of troubleshoot, right? And the last tab is settings. And when you look at your settings tab, you should be able to see make a quiz. That's going to make sure that it keeps all those scores for you, right? You're going to see manage how responses are collected and protected. You always want to make sure that you collect email addresses. I learned that the hard way because I had all these submissions and then I couldn't find out who turned in what. Another flop. This one is relatively newer. Allow response editing. This means that a student can go back and change their response after they've submitted it. I find this to be useful if you're doing a quiz that's going to take multiple days. So if you are going to give them maybe 1 or 2 days to finish up an assignment, that's a useful tool to allow them. So to activate that, you just slide it over. For us, we could restrict to 1 response if you only want the student to answer 1 time instead. Then we're getting down to that point where, okay, so now here we have showing students progress bar, which is always good, especially if you have students on an IEP or who have attention issues. Being able to see how far along they are in the quiz and how far they have to go is a really useful way to help them manage their fidgetiness. And I don't know, I teach middle schoolers, so after a while they get all like squirrely. So being able to see I'm halfway done, okay, hang in there, is really useful for kids. We're going to keep on scrolling down to some of the defaults. So form defaults, no, not that, sorry. You see me flopping around here now. Where are you? There should be in here a place where you change the, I don't see it on here, sorry guys.
I think you have to make it a quiz.
Yes,
then
I'm like, it's not a quiz, so I think that's part of my problem. But once it's a quiz, it'll say on one of these sliders to either release scores immediately or release scores after submission. When you click on the slider that says release scores after submission, that gives you an opportunity to see something, maybe if they have a written response, grade it, and then give them the score. Right underneath that is something that will say whether or not you're going to allow them to see the correct answers or not. So it's in that same section. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, I didn't make this a quiz. So let me see if I can make this a quiz, and there we go. Okay, here we go. There, the sliders are there now. So respondents can see which questions were answered incorrectly. If you don't want them to see the answers, you just deselect that. And now when they get their quiz back, they won't know what they missed. They'll just know what score they got in general. I usually leave this one selected so they can see which one they got wrong, but I always deselect this one. I don't want them to see the correct answers, right? I don't want them to see the correct answers for a couple of reasons. Number one, if I'm allowing a retake, they just got the right answer. So I want them to do a little bit more work to get the right answer. Number two, if you're teaching period 3 and using the same quiz for period 4 and that kid gets their score back, you don't want them to go to their buddy and tell them all the answers, right? So I usually will deselect this one so that they don't see all the answers right away. But they should be able to see point values so they know how many points each question is worth.
But they're still getting the questions back with this. And that's what I'm trying to prevent. I wish I could just give them the score and
So
not the question.
the workaround there is it's extra work, because you're right. No matter what, as soon as you release the scores, it is going to show them the question plus whether or not they got it right, unless you deselect that. So what you could do is you could go into the middle tab and manually write in their scores and not do an import. That would be a workaround there too. It just takes extra
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you. I just thought I'd throw it out there. But I appreciate
No,
it.
it's actually a good point, and I'll pass it along. I thought I saw another hand up. Did I see one?
Lucy, yeah, it was me. I had a quick question about this if you have time. I have no problems sharing the document with students that have the same email address as our district. However, when I go and share it with an outside email, for some reason or another, it doesn't, I have to do extra steps on it. I'm not quite sure where I'm messing up on, where they either can't view it or I'm sharing it and they're editing everything else in the form. Can you briefly show me how to do that?
Yeah, I can try. So one thing that happens is if you're using a district email and you're using, for example, Google Classroom, and that's tied to your district email, Google's not going to really want you give this quiz to anyone. So you really do have to look at the settings when you're trying to give it to people outside of your district. So in this case, down at the bottom, there's usually a spot, see where it says restrict to users in Burbank Unified School District. You're going to want to make sure that that is not selected. Okay. And then when you send it, you're going to want to make sure that all the permissions are there that allow anyone to respond to the quiz. You don't want to give edit access though. And that's something that sometimes people do accidentally. They might give out editing access. So what I do is I always make sure to collect emails, and then I just use a link and send things out via link. That way I know that they're not getting edit access. What some people do is they just share from up here. They copy and paste it from up here. And I have found that when I do that, I'm giving people permission to edit the quiz. So make sure you go through that send button, not through the top bar. That way you make sure that they're looking at the quiz, taking the quiz, but not editing the quiz.
That's my issue.
Yeah, so,
I'm copying from the address bar. Okay.
yeah,
Thank you.
make sure that you copy from here, from send.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else before we move on to the next? Okay, so we're gonna keep on moving. This train's rolling. All right, so next up is sheets. Sheets freak me out, guys. I'm just gonna say, I'm not a super user of Excel. I'm not a person that likes using spreadsheets at all. I will say there are some really cool things that I have learned that you can do with sheets, and that I am becoming more comfortable with it. One thing that I do a lot when I use sheets is I take things from other people who have already created it, right? I use that as a base. Instead of starting from scratch, I look for something similar to what I want and then modify it. So a great example is a rubric. There are ways to make rubrics in Google Classroom using sheets. And that to me is not the ideal way, but it is a way that some teachers really like. I found, and I will give you a copy of my slides after, but I found Alice Keeler. She has a copy that's all set up, ready to go. And so I use hers. Okay. That would be a big tip for you if you're ever using a product for the first time, or you just feel a little insecure with the product. Try to see if you can find someone who's mastered it and put something out there, and then just modify it for yourself. Make a copy and modify. A couple of things that are really cool that I've just learned how to do, because like I said, sheets are not my favorite. One is conditional formatting. So that allows you to color in specific cells. I find this useful with rubrics or when I'm putting in grades. You can use conditional formatting to say, for example, everyone who scores below 90% gets a blue color square. Everyone who scores above 90% gets a yellow color square, and that way you can visually see scores. So that's a fun tip. And again, Google makes it pretty easy. They have some support for that. You can look it up, how to use conditional formatting, and they break it down step by step. So I don't want to take too much time on that, but trust me, it's there, and there's a link to it in the slide right when you click on use conditional formatting. This one's a cool one that I just saw being used more often, which is using conditional formatting to make pixel art. And this is something I've seen a lot in math class, where you take something like a couple of spaces on the side margin of a sheet and maybe create some math problems. And as the students solve the problem, it creates an image, right? It uses conditional formatting to say every time someone answers 8, you're going to color it in blue. Every time someone answers 6, every square then is going to be colored in yellow. So this is a pretty cool way to make math a little bit engaging, or they can create a mystery image. Again, this is more advanced. So what I would do is see if you can find a pixel art project out there already, tinker with it instead of starting from scratch. Typically, that's an easier way to learn how to do it. Any questions on sheets? Please no. It's like it's my least favorite of all Google products. Okay, yay. Thank you for not quizzing me on sheets. It really is tough for me. It's not in my English language arts math. You know, it's like, it's not in my brain. It's not in my wheelhouse. Okay, so we're gonna move on to one that I am more familiar with, and that is Docs. Docs hasn't had too much of an upgrade recently, but one thing that they have that's pretty cool is this new feature where you can use to attach information from other Google Docs or slides or forms that you have, even your calendar, and you can import it into that doc so they're connected. It makes little shortcuts for you. So you'll see in my GIF on the side, when you click you can start adding in dates. You can add in people who you want to see this document. So for example, I want Lucy Bowers to look at this document. I just put and her name will come up on as I start typing, and I select it. You can connect to another document. So if you were sharing this document's all about birthday planning, now I can share the wish list and the trip itinerary all in one space. And you can even put things into your calendar from here. So this is a really cool feature that's been updated on Docs. For students, this is a great tool for collaboration. So if you were going to have your kids working together on an assignment, this is a great way to make sure that everyone has access to the assignment. If one student, for example, did one part of the assignment, they could just write the and then attach it here. So it keeps everything nice and tidy so that you can come back and refer to one sheet, one doc, instead of going to multiple places. Then that's all clickable. So that is the coolest update that they have with Docs. I like to use Docs with my sub plans. So this again would be a really cool use of this feature. If you knew the sub's email address and had it in Google somewhere, you could tag them on it, tag the lesson plan, tag the presentations, tag everything in one spot. And that way your lesson plans are good to go and it has, you know, all the things that you need all in one place. Any questions about our Docs and their updates? Any ways you think you might use this? This is like kind of a newer idea here. Yeah, it's kind of, this one's like, even I am tinkering with it. It's like pretty new. Matthew, what are you thinking?
Hi, yeah. So I just want to reiterate what you just said. I think that's pretty, okay, so that's pretty neat with as far as sub plans go. If I have, if I need a sub in the future, instead of doing it the old fashioned way, leaving printed notes on my desk, I could just tag this substitute if I knew the sub's email on my, okay.
And you could attach, like, I want you to show this presentation. You would type and start typing in the title of the presentation, and you can attach it right on that doc. So yeah, I think this would be a really cool way to leave a sub plan with everything embedded in it. The sub won't have to like search around everywhere. It's just all right here. That's how I would use this.
Thank you. I just wanted to confirm what you just said.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's pretty useful. All right, so the next one is slides. Slides is my favorite. I use slides all the time. The first thing I wanted to show you is that you can use, there are so many templates out there, so many different ways to set up slides. One thing that I'm a big proponent of is Edu protocols. If you haven't looked into that, please do. You can find so many on Twitter. They have a great website that I have a link to here. But one thing that they do really well is something called a thin slide. And I wanted to show you what a thin slide looks like. Thin slide would be something where you give a student a prompt. So introduce yourself, tell us something about yourself in a thin slide. And this is a fast assignment. It's maybe 5 minutes. You have them write their name at the top. You have them put in an image, write one, two, 3 words, nothing long. So student would get something like this, and they would be able to manipulate it and make it look the way they want to look. What I wanted to show you is how to make this slide look the way it looks. So you'll notice that some things here are stationary. They're not moving. This thing that says name is something I don't want my students to move around or fidget with. I want the name thing to be up there. This box, I don't know, I just put a box there, but let's say this is something important. I don't want my students to manipulate. I want it to stay in the same spot. However, the picture, I do want them to move around. I do want them to feel free to move this wherever they want to. And for some reason, I also want them to be able to move this. Okay. I used to do all of this on the slide and then copy, 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 copy. The better way to do that is instead to go to View and go to Theme Builder. Okay, this is making the master. And then from there, you can just have everything look exactly the way you want it to look. This revolutionized so much for me. It saved me so much time. I don't think a lot of people use the theme builder as much as they should. So if I want to change all the background colors of all of my slides, I can do that in the theme builder. If I want to make, and you can see here on the side, now all the slides have that same color. If I want to make something move, like, oh, I don't like this box over here, I want it up here for some reason, now it's automatically moved it on every single slide. This section right here is something that is optional, or I want my students to be able to have some freedom with. I'm going to go to Insert. And way down at the bottom, you'll see Placeholder. This is new. Now you can put a text placeholder that students can fill in, and it'll change depending on what they write. Or if they don't fill it in, it leaves it blank and makes the rest of your slide deck still look nice because it just leaves it blank. You can also do the same by adding in images. So if you notice on the side, I have this circle here. I'm moving it over here. It's showing up on individual slides. It's showing up on the theme, but when a student goes to turn it in, if they leave it blank, it's not there. It's a really cool concept, something that is new, and it allows for a more customizable experience for kids. And I just, again, this saved me so much time when I switched from doing everything manually on the individual deck to just using View, Theme Builder, and building everything there. And then that even goes to changing fonts. If you want to change the font on every single slide deck, you don't have to go individually in there. It's in the Theme Builder. You can change the font size, color, shape, whatever, all in one spot. Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns? Christine.
Hi, so I'm very interested in this theme builder and how you're getting things to be stationary on the slides so that students cannot delete it or move it. Would you mind showing again or explaining how you got that name on there so that students, they just fill it in, but they can't move the name around?
Yeah, so let me show you. What I did is I went to the theme builder, right? And anything that I just type into the theme builder. Oh, sorry. That would help, wouldn't it? right? Maybe you might want to see. Okay, so anything that I insert onto the theme builder here that is not a placeholder is going to be movable, changeable by kids. So I'm going to change it. You'll notice it changed it everywhere, right? You see it on the side. So now if I went ahead and instead of that triangle, I put in this weird arrow. For some reason, I want arrows on all my docs, right? This here, I just inserted. The students will be able to not move this now, right? They can't do anything with it. It's stationary. A placeholder is movable. A placeholder is temporary. It's like up here at the top where we said fill in your name. I want them to change that. I want them to write their name there. So I just inserted the little space for their name and wrote click to answer here, and there we go, right? So I'll show you again because I think I was a little blubbery on that answer. So we go to theme builder. You can insert whatever you want and it's going to keep it where you place it. If you would like something to be movable, flexible, fill-inable, you're going to insert and then all the way at the bottom, placeholder, either a text placeholder or an image placeholder. Now that makes it so that kids they can see it here, they can move it wherever they need to. And you'll notice if they leave it blank, if they didn't fill it in, it's just going to show up as blank and there's not going to be anything there. Yeah.
So where you typed the word or the word name, they can't move that. And then you added a placeholder next to name so that they could type into that spot.
Exactly. So this here,
Awesome.
they cannot move, but this is a placeholder. So they can move it, they can change the font, they can manipulate it however they want. Okay. This
Thank
to
you.
me, no problem. This to me was a really big game changer in terms of how I use slides, because what I was finding with sixth graders in particular is I'd want them to write their name and then all of a sudden like the name is like floating all over in space, right? So if you give it a dedicated space, kids are pretty good about knowing, okay, here it says name, my name goes here. It's something that I actually didn't like about slides was that everything was manipulatable, if that's a word, but that they could move it wherever they wanted to. This allows you to decide as an educator what stays on every single slide and what kids can manipulate and move around. So that's a really great tip that helped me a lot. I always use the theme builder when I'm building up slides. The other thing I just wanted to show was the second GIF at the bottom. I'm presenting right now. I'm not using the share button because I want to be able to go to other tabs, but you can see that my slide deck is taking up the full space. So there's another new feature. Let's see if I can get to it. Okay, when you go to view, you can either show what's called the film strip on the side if you want your kids to be able to see what's coming next, or you want them to be able to see all the slides on that side, or like I had it before, I get a little bit more room when I go like this. It takes away that side margin and gives me a little bit more space to manipulate and show. Okay. Any ideas, questions, thoughts about slides? Slides is my favorite, like I said.
There was a question in the chat about Word docs.
Oh, cool. Let's see. Docs, not as much. So whenever I make something like a graphic organizer or sentence frames or things like that, I make it in slides. Docs is not as easy to manipulate as slides. I find slides to be the most versatile of all of the Google apps. It's the one that I use most frequently because of that. Because you can move things around, you can leave things stationary, and in Docs, it's just all formatted in one space, and there's not as much customizability. Keep coming up with these words. What do I select from the menu to get rid of the side preview? So you're going to go all the way up to, I'm going to share it again so you can see it. It's newer. So you're going to go to view. Sorry, you're going to go to view. And then all the way down at the bottom, it says new. Okay, it's called show film strip or hide film strip. So you either want them to be able to see what's coming up or you don't. You can hide it or you can show it to them. Okay.
I was wondering, is that different than going to slideshow at the top and opening it up?
It's like in this situation, this is, I think I'm modeling what situation you might use this in, right? Because if you're showing a slideshow, it gets a little clumsy to move to a different window. It's hard to like get back. You have to, exit. And so this way you can see all my tabs are up at the top. They're open and ready to go. Right. But the screen is still large enough that students can see what I'm working on. The other thing about this is that I could edit as I'm speaking to you. Right. So if all of a sudden we are working as a class together and someone asks a great question and I decide, oh, you know what, I'm going to add that to my notes. You can see that in real time. Whereas in present mode, you can't, right? You can't edit while you're presenting. So this is now, it's a newer thing. It's something I'm just getting used to, but I like it because I can still feel like I have some control over what the students are seeing, but I have the full effect of having a larger screen space without having them looking to see, oh, what's coming up next? Oh, we're almost done, that sort of thing. So I like taking that film strip off and just showing from here. Christine?
Yes, so I teach 100% virtually. So I use my slides every single day. And I've been doing slideshow, but when you click the little caret, you can have it so that your speaker notes are on your other monitor. Is there a way to do that when you're in this mode that you're in right now, but I could drag my speaker notes onto another monitor so my students can't see them, but I can see them?
I'm giving the weird face because that's a I don't know face.
Okay.
I'm like, could you do that? I am at home right now. At home, I only have one monitor. At work, I have two. So I'll look into that for you because I would be interested to know. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. It seems like it should work, but I'd have to look into it. Taylor? I don't know if Taylor has her hand up or if it's still up.
No. Oh, no.
It's like, don't call on me, please. Sorry. All right, there. Hello, it. All right, so we're going to keep on moving. All right, so now we're on to the newer stuff, the stuff that's fringe, the stuff that people don't use very often, that I think is pretty useful and pretty cool. But I'm, again, being totally honest, I am just starting to use these products myself. But I'm finding that there is there are a lot of great uses for some of these. So the first one we're going to go over is, there we go, maps. Maps. Stay on the map. Maps. Maps has kind of been fluid with Google. They've changed the format of it. They've kind of tinkered with what they call it. But now we're on to maps, and specifically my maps. And I teach social studies, but I have seen applications for this in all subject areas. So if you're a math or science teacher, there still is a way to use maps if you wanted to. I think it's pretty cool. So I'm going to just share with you a map that I created for our study of India that's coming up in the second semester. So this hasn't been kid approved. Everything else that I've shared with you has, but this hasn't. So what you do with maps is you are able to click on a location in something called My Maps and make destinations for people to stop at, to learn something about, and to explore more. There's a couple of things that are cool that you can do here. So you notice that when I clicked on this space here, as a teacher, I typed all of this in. I put in what I wanted my students to see when they clicked on Mohenjo-Daro. Okay, so when they click on this, I want them to see the title. I want them to see this description. I put in a link to a YouTube video that I want them to watch. I also added in some photos that they can click on to see better pictures of the space. So it really is a neat way if you're teaching geography to engage students and to have them look on a physical map and see where places are, especially for history teachers, or again, if you're teaching about geography. For science, I have seen some people create maps that have different terrains. So, you know, maybe a map of the tundra and it explains what you'll find there, types of animals, you name it. That's something that I've seen with science. With math, I've seen people do kind of like fun tours, like where you stop in one place, you solve a problem, you move to the next spot, you solve another problem, just as a way to be engaging and to make it more fun for kids to learn math around the world, or, you know, math vacation, and you take them through vacation spots. That's a pretty cool way of using this too. Maps would require a second document, is the only thing that's a downside, because kids can't submit anything through maps. But you can use this as like an interaction and maybe have a worksheet for them to fill out, or have a form for them to fill out if they had the dual screens going on. So this is kind of a newer thing that I'm tinkering with. And my kids have really enjoyed it. We've done a few maps already and they've really liked it. Where do I find my maps? Again, I don't start from scratch because this is newer for me. So I looked up Google Maps Mesopotamia, right? I found one that was similar to what I wanted to do. And I looked at how they set it up, and then I created my own. My maps in particular is pretty easy to find. It's pretty self-explanatory. But if you need more help, I do have the link in here to show you like exactly how to set it up. One thing that is, if you have older kids, high school age kids, is have them make a map, right? If they're studying something in particular, if they're studying artists, for example, maybe having them make a map of where different artists live and include pictures of their artwork. There are a lot of cool applications here using maps that, you know, I'm just starting to tinker with, but I think that if you teach social studies, this is a really pivotal tool, I think, that is going to help make the map a little more engaging than just a piece of paper. Any questions, comments, ideas with maps?
I've done some, I've used Sheets, Google Sheets. I've had students like input information about a colony, and then I don't even remember how he did it, because it was so hard to get it to input all these things, and there's so many different steps that I messed up on. But once I got it, it was really cool and the kids loved it. So I think it's a really neat project if you can figure it out, or like borrow from you, you know, like a template. But it is really neat.
I'm going to just share quickly. I opened a new tab to show you where you would start. If you were starting from scratch, like you don't have anything, you want to create your own map. So you would just go to google.com/maps, and it'll take you here. Create a new map. Again, I'm new to it. I might flop. We'll see. We'll see how I do. Okay, so you're going to then select your spot that you want. We're not importing data. I think that's what you're talking about, using a sheet and importing data. The way that I did it was just using the base map, I believe. If you want it to look a certain way, you can have it look like this. You can have it look like a road. Okay, so you can decide the look of the map. And then from here, all right, gotta remember how I did this. I'm forgetting, guys. I'm flopping live. I'm live and I'm flopping. I am just new to this. I've really just started using the map like seriously last week. So this is what I do. I'm showing you live. How do I figure this out? I don't really want to learn more. So unfortunately I clicked on it, but I don't want to learn more. I just want to keep on tinkering. So I think it was something super easy. I'm going to keep on searching for it. Another day I will share with you how I put the place on them. Oh, here we go. This is why, because the Zoom was blocking the place on the map. That's why I couldn't see it. There we go. So just select your spot. The Zoom is still kind of in my way, but now I'm going to put mountains. I'm going to write my speech here, save it. I can change the color, the style of it. I can add pictures from here. I can import them from my camera, or I can import, from my computer, or I can look up Google image search and add the pictures from there. It really isn't that hard. You guys saw me fumble through it right now in live in real time, right? It just took kind of clicking around until you see like the add a point. And it looks like it's right here. It's this little add marker spot. Okay. So it's not too tricky, but you can come up with some really cool things. And like I said, because I'm newer to this application, I usually start with someone that has already tried it before. I start with theirs. I assign that to my students. I see how they interact with it. I look to see what works and what doesn't, and then I tinker. But I don't start off with something new the first time with kids. I start off with something that someone else has created just to get my feet wet, and then I try to create it on my own. And then I share on a Zoom in front of a bunch of people. And I'm like mortified.
Thank you for sharing, because that's a lot easier than how I was taught.
Yeah, I think
Now I'll do
I
it.
know what you're talking about. I know that that used to be the way. So
Yeah.
like I said, Maps has changed so many times. When I tested on Maps, it was very different than how it is now. So I'm not quite as familiar with the new Maps. Amy, thanks for waiting.
I'm okay. You answered it actually.
Yay. Okay, good. That's always my favorite. Okay, so now we're gonna go back to the slides. Maps is really fun, lots of applications, and it's not super hard as I just showed. It's easy enough that I think after tinkering with it, you can give it over to your kids to create their own maps with their own destinations. And that's something that I think is a fun assignment, because then they can share with other kids and they can go through a student's map. So that's Maps. All right, the next fringe app that I also am just starting to get my feet wet with is what's called Arts and Culture. Arts and Culture is a resource. It's not really used much as a place to create work, but it's more of a resource to find work. So you can play games, you can visit a museum, you can learn about artists, you can discover places, you can share all of these things on Google Classroom pretty seamlessly. So I really have just started with Arts and Culture, but I'm loving it so far. So for example, some people might say, well, I don't teach art. There's just a lot of different things you can do here. It's really cool. One thing that they have is this section that says Explore. You can just putz around and look. They have these games called experiments here, where you can build a puzzle. You can do this visual crossword, which is really fun. A coloring book. My students just got this assigned to them, where they can take this. We're all virtual, so I don't have the option of like doing physical art with them, but this is a way of bringing in some of that art without having physical paper there. They can color this in however they want just by clicking. They can make it silly, as middle schoolers usually do. But yeah, it is an interactive experience with this art. And then yes, we're gonna exit. They have so many different ways to manipulate art. They have 360 videos. They have a street view if you want to go to a virtual field trip to a specific site. You can look inside the museum and explore the artwork as if you were in it, which is really cool. You can see down here at the bottom, these are places from around the world that they can go visit. When I first used this, I just looked up. You can see my last search was for early man, because I thought, I wonder if they have anything for social studies that I could implement. And I just searched up early man and I found a few things that were interesting. So I found this interactive about the Bronze Age. I found something about innovations of the first Homo sapiens. So many cool things that, like I said, it's not really a product that students are going to be making, but a resource for them to access material, to have some experience with things that are far away that they might not ever get to see. So this is something that I really have just scratched the surface on, but I highly recommend looking at it. This is one that I thought was super cool for my social studies 6 class. We were learning about cave art, and this takes them into a cave where they can see the cave art up on the walls and click on it and learn a little bit more about what this might represent, how historians found it. So this is a really cool new tool out there that I highly recommend for you, and that is Google Arts and Culture. Have any of you ever used this before? No one knows it exists. So that's my one thing. I'm like, Google, why aren't you telling people this really cool database is here? Nikki, what's up?
No, I was just commenting on your last question.
Oh
Was,
yeah, have you used it before?
Yeah, I've used it before for virtual field trips. And that was really great because it's places that we can't reach, like the Statue of Liberty that they have. I'm not particularly sure if it's there that I found it, but things like that, that the kids could never experience living on the West Coast so easily. So
yeah,
yeah.
I think it's a really neat tool. If you teach art, they have art by artists throughout history, starting as you saw with early man, going through modern art. It's just, it's such a huge database. And you can explore by region, by art type, by historical period. There's just a lot there. So if you have some time to just kind of peruse through, I highly recommend spending some time in Google Arts and Culture. And like I said, it is really nice because you can just import everything into Google Classroom, and it's right there for them. They talk to each other, as I always say. They talk to each other. So you just click a button and it will send it into Google Classroom. Any other questions, comments, ideas? All right, we're moving on to I think the last one, which is Jamboard. Jamboard is can I just tell you, it was my biggest flop. My biggest flop ever was with Jamboard. The reason why is because Jamboard used to be totally maneuverable by kids. And so when you put something on Jamboard, kids would go into Jamboard and move things all over the place and delete things. And it just became such a mess. And so the first time I used it, I was determined to never use it again. It's like, I'm never using this stinks. I'm really glad that I gave it that second try, because once I did, I used it a lot last year during distance learning when our students couldn't physically be in a space together to work on something. Jamboard was a lifesaver. So if you're teaching students remotely, I highly recommend using Jamboard. And they fixed the thing that used to drive me nuts, because now you can import a background and that keeps things stationary in the back. So now they're only moving things that you want them to move. So I love Jamboard. The other super cool thing about Jamboard is that people have created everything under the sun for Jamboard. So please don't start from scratch. Like I said, find something that you want to try and use Jamboard with that material already created, right? So you're not going in with a new resource for kids with a new app at the same time. Okay, you're taking something that someone else has already tried. They have proven it worked. They've shared it with the world. And now you're going to practice using Jamboard a few times. Then you can start creating your own things. So that was my journey with Jamboard. Like I said, it was not a positive one at first. Now I really appreciate and like using Jamboard. So here is one of the ones that the kids loved. I'll share a link with you. Last year during distance learning, I had my groups in their breakout rooms and we talked about one must go, and they have to rank these items from the one that their group decided that they could, you know, get off the face of the earth and they would be okay with, and the one that they could never part with, they have to have it. It's so important to them. And then at the bottom, they had to explain. So the kids had a lot of fun, you know, kind of arguing back and forth, moving these guys, like, you know, talking about, oh, I don't really like donuts, you know, but tacos, they have to stay. Ice cream, I'm lactose intolerant. So let's move that over here, right? And you can have all your students working on this at the same time, or like I usually do, I put them in groups and assign them up at the top corner, team name, and they have to write their name here. So I know who's working on this slide, and they can work on the jam. So I'm going to actually have us try this Jamboard. So I'm not just talking about the Jamboard. I'm going to put it in the chat. You can go ahead and check it out. I'll give a few minutes for us to look around, poke around, see if you can decide which ones you want to move. Usually we would do this in a breakout room in small groups. So this is going to be not quite the same experience, but you can get the idea of how it works. And sorry, I got to unlock it really fast. Okay, so oops, I got to change one more thing because of course. Okay, so when you are using a Jamboard, you want to make sure that you wait until the absolute last minute if you teach middle schoolers to share the link and to share editing access, because if you teach middle schoolers, as soon as you give them the link, they're going to run to it and try to move everything around before you've given instructions. So do what I'm doing now, which is tell the instructions. You're going to work. You don't really have to label or organize things. I just want you to see how everything moves around in Jamboard today. Okay, so now you're all able to move things around. Okay, and I can see some of you doing that. What I wanted to show you is that when your students are logged into their school account, you can see who's moving things around. That was another thing I didn't like about Jamboard, was that because kids were moving things, deleting things, it felt like I was giving them control and they were anonymous. Once I showed the kids that, like, hey, I can see your little avatar up here at the top. I know it's you, Joe. They all of a sudden felt that like accountability piece, right? So they're not just deleting things or just being silly on there. They know I can see their movements in real time. And one trick that I used to do is I'd click this little arrow here, and now it shows me multiple groups at the same time, right? So sometimes I would say, hey, anonymous Wolverine. Usually when students are logged in with their school account, I can tell who that is. I can click on it and say, hey, Joe, you're supposed to be on slide 4. Get over to slide 4. And Joe, I am on slide 4. I would show them this and say, no, you're not. I can see that you're not on slide 4. So this is a really neat way to view everyone's work on Jamboard, right? It's a fun activity to do. You can make it as academic focused or not as you want. A lot of times I just do Jamboards for fun, but I have done a few assignments that were more rigorous using Jamboard. I just feel like at a certain point, if I want something that is permanent, I'm going to use Google Slides instead. So this is something that's fun, engaging, maybe lighthearted, team building kind of activities. And then at a certain point as an educator, if I want to keep it, if I want to document it, if I want it for academic purposes, I use slides instead, It's a little bit more stable. Okay, kids will play with Jamboards forever. Like seriously, one time I did not stop them from playing on the Jamboard, and like the next day there were kids on there still moving things around. So one trick is to always remember, when you no longer want people using your Jamboard, you go up to the share button again, and now you're going to change this so that anyone with a link is not editor. Now they're viewer again. And that should prevent any further changes. Okay, now they're no longer able to move or manipulate anything. Okay, Jamboard is super cool. Any questions, ideas, thoughts? What are you thinking about Jamboard here? Anyone use it?
Mm-mm.
No, it's good. Christine, what's up?
I actually have been using Jamboard, and it's been kind of a flop for one of the reasons you mentioned. Kids are moving things around, so the background is really helpful.
Yeah.
My question is, where are you finding, you're saying to not like reinvent the wheel essentially, so where are you finding all of these
Aha.
Jamboards?
Talk about segue. Talk about segue. Okay, let me get back to my slides. So, Christine, it's like I could not have timed it more perfectly. Okay, the main thing that you're going to get from this PD right now is this slide right here. Okay, this slide right here is the list of people whose content I use all the time. Okay, this is the short list. As a Google certified trainer, one thing that we have access to is all the materials and work that other Google certified trainers put up on our database, right? So that's a really cool thing. These are the 5 people who I feel just are always coming up with something new and fresh. Okay, these are the people who are always bringing something new to the game. And if you are just getting started with something like Jamboard, this is a great place to start. So let me go ahead and go over some of these. Mrs. Park, I have the website linked here. So when I share my slide deck with you, you can see it for yourself. But Mrs. Park, she has Jamboards, she has slides, she has so many different resources, specifically for students who are second language learners. So if you work with an ELD population, she is a great resource. She makes so many cool activities, choice boards, you name it, and it's free. You can pay to give her a cup of coffee, but you can see that she's got just mountains of materials. And it is, to me, one of those things where if you have lower level ELD students and you want them to be able to engage, she creates these templates that you can use to give them so that they can have, like this one that says talk task, they can have part of the conversation and have the sentence frames there to help them. I mean, she just comes up with such cute ideas. I love this one, the I love you Jamboard, where people could write like a little message to their classmates. I know that it does seem like it's geared toward younger kids, and it is, and it's also geared towards early language learners. However, this is a starting point for me with Jamboards, and I would suggest starting here for you too. Find something that is interesting to you, engaging to you. From here, she lets you copy them and you can use it. So this is one resource that I really appreciate, Mrs. Park. She's great. Okay, the next one is Matt Miller. He is Ditch That Textbook. He has right now a free PD going on that is going on, I believe, the whole month of December. He does a ton with Google Slides, kind of like Mrs. Parkshine. He just has like a ton of resources available. I can't even tell you where to start, but here's like Google ideas, you click on this and he's just got a ton. He really puts out, he has books, which you would pay for, but then he has just free downloads, browse Google ideas. You can choose by app and he shows you, I mean, just so many things. So here are his resources. I did one of his that was really cool. I mean, just templates. He's got it all there for you. He's one of my faves. Yeah, Ditch Book. Ditch Book is the name of his book, but it's also his philosophy is that we're ditching the textbook and we're using more of these interactive apps. Casey Bell with Shake Up Learning. Sorry, it's probably going to be blocked. Casey Bell with Shake Up Learning. She has more of your Google basics. So if you were trying to learn how to do something on Google, like I need tips on how to set up a Google Doc, or I need tips with how to set up Google Classroom, or what are some best practices. Casey Bell has everything available. She trains people to become trainers. Most of her resources are free. There are some things you would pay for, but most of it is free. She also has several books as well. I mean, seriously, it's just overload of stuff with Casey Bell. And she's also just a really nice person. She does a podcast. I mean, she's got a ton. Alice Keeler is a go-to for English language arts, anything. She's got it all there. I'm gonna see if it'll let me share. Sometimes my laptop blocks things for no reason because it just is like that. And then the last one is one that I found on Twitter. And I still wanted to share that because I wanted to encourage you to use Twitter as a resource, because a lot of these products or apps or templates that I've mentioned, I found on Twitter. They just put them up there, like Ditch Book, Matt Miller, he updates his Twitter almost every day with new things that he came up with. So if you're not on teacher Twitter, I highly suggest that as a good starting point too, to find free resources. So you're not reinventing the wheel, you're not starting from scratch. And then the last one that I would say would just be me. You can always ask me if you have a question, or, you know, Lucy, I'm trying to work on this map, and I know that you are not a whiz at maps, but would you like to work with me? I'm happy to collaborate with people. I really do enjoy working with teachers, especially newer teachers. And the main thing you'll learn about me is that I'm learning along with you. So it's a win-win for me. It's never a bother. It's never too much of an ask. It always helps me learn when I'm helping others. And then the last resource that I wanted to share with you is the resource where I got all the information I needed to become Google certified. And that is, again, not very well advertised by Google, but they have the Google for Education training page. The Google for Education training page has step-by-step tutorials on every single Google app. So if you wanted to learn more about how to use forms or drawing, which I didn't even get into today, you could go to that website and they will have step-by-step tutorials on every aspect of that app. It's amazing what is out there for free that is available whenever you need it. It's just always there. Yeah, so that would be one of the main stops that I would say. If you're stuck, look there. And then the last one is a newer thing for kids. If your kids are stuck, they have this applied digital skills site where they put up all kinds of resources for students to be able to use to help them troubleshoot or help them work on projects. Or I've even gotten a couple of project ideas from this as an educator looking at it from a kid's lens. So yeah, this is that would be it for me. If you need more help. If you need more help, there are lots of places to get help. Remember, you have to just have that courage to ask and that courage to flop. So if you are wanting to ask someone, you can ask me. I left my phone number up there for you. I don't care if you text me, you can email me. Rebecca has my contact information. You can get it from her. I hope that she'll share my slide deck with you, and I'll make sure that I have my contact on there as well. You can find me on Twitter. Basically, I'm everywhere. If you need me, I'm a resource for you. That's the end for me, unless we have any questions or comments.
Lucy, are you okay grabbing the link to your slides and putting them into the chat for people to open right now? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So before you all click away, please don't go yet. We have, I absolutely need you to fill out the post-session survey. And since we're finishing a little early and it only takes a couple minutes, shouldn't be too much of a problem. I am required to take attendance for today. And based on the sign-up sheet, it only showed 4 people, but we had almost 30 at some point. So I have a lot of names I didn't know were coming and I need them. So Lucy, you're out of screen share, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go back into screen share. If you could make me wait. No, I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm going to grab the link to the survey. I think I am. There we go. And hold on. See, this is why Lucy's the pro and not me. I'm going to grab this survey link and put it in the chat. So grab Lucy's slides and open those up. So you've got that. And then here is the link to the form where you'll give us some feedback and sign your name. And that's how we'll know that you came and attended today. So thank you all so much for coming.
Can I show you one more thing, everyone?
Yeah,
one
of
more,
course,
one
a
more
bonus. It's like an encore.
A bonus. Okay. So sometimes you want to share something like your PD, right? That you've worked really hard on and you don't want people to change up, right? So there is a way for you to force people to make a copy of your work instead of giving them the copy that is the master copy, right? So I just want to make sure everyone knows this trick. You go up to the top and right here, it used to say edit. I'm just gonna, sorry, it used to say edit a long time ago. You're gonna change that word edit into copy. Okay, you're going to change the word edit to copy. When you change that word edit to copy, it forces the person to make a copy of your document instead of giving them access to the original document. And you're going to want to do that anytime you share anything with anyone that you don't want them to touch and manipulate and change. So you just go up to the top address line, you'll see share, and you're going to change that to copy. Or edit.
I think, Lucy, that was like my favorite part, not favorite part, but like when the pandemic hit and we all shut down and then went into home learning, and most of the teachers and teacher specialists and those cutting edge teachers, we were real familiar with Google Classroom and Docs, and we knew how to make copies and stuff, but we were tasked with helping principals get up to speed, and the principals never knew to make copies of stuff. And so they'd get into folders and drives and files and just wreak havoc. And the teacher, you know, specialist team was like, ah, so we're glad to learn that shortcut. Lucy, do you have the slides in the chat? I'm not,
there you go.
There they are, everybody. So you have your feedback survey, your attendance sheet, which is the same thing, and you have Lucy's slides. Open those up and bookmark them or save them or drag them and keep them separate so that they're there. But you also have my contact information, Rebecca Milwaukee at Burbank Unified, burbankusd.org. And you can ask your induction program coordinator for our contacts as well if you want to get in touch with Lucy. And we thank you guys so much for spending your Monday night with us during a real busy week. Have a wonderful vacation. Happy holidays to everybody. Thank you so much. Good night.
So much.
Yes.
Lucy, stop recording.
Recording.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.